Welcome to the White Sox Recap Podcast. I am Ryan McGuffey. Happy New Year, everyone. And with 2025 off and running, we have a special treat for you with this episode. White Sox Vice President and General Manager Chris Getz is with us right here in the Recap Studios for a lengthy sit-down on the state of the White Sox. What's the plan going forward after a historically bad season? Why should fans continue to believe? Plus, the facelift behind the scenes that he's given the organization. Just how upset was he at last year's trade deadline when he learned that Garrett Crochet wanted an extension or he wouldn't pitch in the postseason? Did it table trades? Plus, were there ever extension talks? And will the White Sox ever sign a $100 million player on his watch? He even chimes in on who should be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears. David Kaplan, Cap, joins me for an in-depth conversation with the general manager of the Chicago White Sox, Chris Getz, right here on the White Sox Recap Podcast, and it starts right now. All right, it's the White Sox Recap Podcast, the first episode of 2025, and we got a real treat for you, everybody here. The GM of the Chicago White Sox, Chris Getz, here in the Recap Studios. Chris, we really appreciate you being in here. Cap is sitting in for this episode, so you know it's big if Cap feels the need to elbow his way into a White Sox Recap Podcast.
Oh, I was so excited when I was talking to Chris. He said, "Yeah, I can make it work." I'm like, "Let's go."
Chris, thanks for being here, man. Happy New Year. Let's just start with, it's not even an elephant in the room, right? You're coming off a 41 and 121 loss season. We know that. How difficult, you answered some of this at the end of the season, but you've had some time to get away. It's been 3 months now since the end of the season. As the attention from a national perspective was, there were more cameras those last 2 weeks at the ballpark than there were all season long. And even for somebody who covers the Sox like me, it was just like, okay, like I get it, but it was like a little nauseating just for people like me. Like, how much did those days wear on you? And when you guys hit that 121st loss, I know at the end of the day, you were going to lose a lot of games no matter what, but to have that record and, how did you handle that whole year, and what is your perspective on it now that you've had some time away?
Well, I mean, you reflect back. You're like, okay, how did we get here, right? How do we continue to build forward? But when you do reflect back, there's some emotions attached to certainly what you had to endure. But towards the end of the year, that was hard. I mean, unfortunately, early in the season, if you paced it out, you knew that there was a chance that you might flirt with that record.
When did you know that?
Gosh,
spring training.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it was. I mean, listen, we traded Dylan Cease a week before the season.
Right.
He was our best pitcher. Now, you looked at the projections. We still were projected to win, above 41 wins. But when you're in July, right? I remember, prepping for the draft, getting excited for having an early pick in the draft, and obviously getting Hagen Smith in the door with us. But, you're nearing the trade deadline as well. And so, you know that you're going to be trading some players that are probably some of the better players that you have on your roster. So, and rarely are you making those moves at the deadline to improve the immediate major league club. So, we were on a very long losing skid. We were on pace to break that record, and we hadn't even traded those guys. So, not easy at all. I mean, talk about, going into this for your first year as a GM, and the pain that was attached to that. And listen, I mean, I know the fan base here. I played here. I played against Chicago White Sox team, and I know what the fan base is like. I mean, they care deeply. They're a fiery bunch. They expect a team that's competing, playing hard, and winning ball games, and they deserve that. And to not be able to deliver much of that at all in the first year, that was really tough. It was. There were some, definitely some sleepless nights. Now, going into the season or rewind back to August 31st and being named to be the general manager of the Chicago White Sox, I knew that this was going to be a process, right? It was going to take some time. So, through those, there are plenty of moments during the year I could personally take a step back and zoom out. All right, what are we looking to accomplish here, right? And not get too caught up with the day-to-day major league club.
More macro look.
Yeah, I mean that's the job ultimately, and certainly where we were at, at that time. So, I was able to, really focus on what we're doing on the international side, the amateur process, our R&D, everything that kind of makes up an organization. I could, take a step back and focus on those areas and put time and effort and look for ways to improve those areas. Because, ultimately to be successful and reach, the peak and also stay up there, stay competitive, you've got to be sound in those areas. But you look at the players at our major league level, you look at our coaching staff and a manager, and everyone's kind of surrounding that. It's hard, right? And managing that, but also, so I had to continue to reiterate our big picture ideas and everyone in our front office, at least, and coaching staff for the most part, but certainly, in all different departments, hey, this is the plan. Okay. Now, are we looking to lose this many games at our major league level? Of course not. No, we don't want to do that. We want to have successful nights. We want to have a good time. We want to celebrate some things. But we really weren't able to do that last year too often. Now, you look at some of the micro stuff, especially on the major league side. You look at the Garrett Crochet season and what we've been able to turn that into. The Eric Fetty signing, out of Korea, kind of an unexpected performance there. Where Michael Kopech was at the end of 2023 season, and to build those guys back up. And then, all right, make a decision. Do we move on from these guys? Can we reinvest underneath? So that very much was a lot of our focus last year. But to answer your question, I mean, it was terrible. Like, it was really hard. But, my situation was to not get too emotional about it, continue to lead our front office, try to explain, to our fan base, what we're doing, what we're trying to do long term. But ultimately, I know fans they want winners. They want to watch that immediately. So, part of this whole process is me personally having to endure some of the painful moments. And last year certainly was painful.
So I asked you before we started, and I said, think about this. I was there when you played Houston in the playoffs. That place, talking about the rate, was rocking.
Yep.
I mean, I had a great time. I'm a huge baseball fan. And I'm just sitting there going, wow, they make a couple moves in the offseason. They could win the World Series. Here we are, like a short amount of time later, and you're having to pick up the pieces. How did we get here?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there,
Yeah.
Without question. When I was put in this position, I talk about the foundational areas of the organization, right? They're if you are not excellent in all of the foundation, let's call it the pillars of the organization, like, it's going to show up, right? And if you become too top heavy and too reliant on, a handful of players to both stay healthy and stay productive, it can fall quickly. It's a house of cards.
They break down.
Right. So you have to have these talent valves all turned on and fluid, and you've got to be able to make adjustments and adapt. I mean, the strategy of success at the major league level, you've got to have a pulse on it too. You talk about, a season like this past year, we don't have the first pick. Right.
Yeah.
So that was a strategy for teams for years, right? It's like, okay, well, it's not that big of a deal.
Did it, the Cubs did it, yeah.
Things have changed, right? But what can't change is being sound in all those areas that make up the organization. So that's really been my focus. It really has. So when you get to that situation where you've got a really competitive club, division winner, you're fighting to go deeper in the playoffs and hopefully towards the World Series, you can't stop. You just cannot stop. And obviously there's some moves here and there and tweaks that need to be made, but that's the recipe for success. I mean, you look around, at least in our division, right? Cleveland's been at it for years. right? And how they've gone about it.
And they don't
I
throw
think they've
huge
made the-
resources
they don't.
money-wise.
14
They don't.
postseason appearances since like the early 2000s. It's insane. 14. I mean, you're talking about 2-team town in this market that don't have 14
But
combined.
they're not the Dodgers or the Yankees.
But they know that. So that's why I'm like, you need to
processes.
know who you are. You can't try to thread the needle in baseball. You're either going to build through the draft and through your system and add pieces along the way, or you're going to be the Dodgers and say, that guy's available, give him an open checkbook. You can't try to be like too cute with it. I mean, that's just how I feel, like just being in the game and covering the game. There's very few examples of those teams that are like, well, look at that one from right there. No, it doesn't work that way. You're either the haves or the have-nots. And if you acknowledge that, like Cleveland knows what they can spend and what, I mean, look, they finally got one of their own locked up a couple of years ago in Jose Ramirez. They have traded guys year in and year out when it was time to make a move, and they've continued to build.
Yeah, I mean, you point to Cleveland, even Minnesota to a certain
Yep.
extent. I know that, they had a disappointing season based on how things ended. You watch what Detroit's doing.
Yeah.
You watch what even Kansas City is doing.
Yeah.
They've all, and they did this years ago where they really committed to the areas that we're talking about. Because those are the markets, obviously, you got to pay attention to, the teams that you're paying attention to.
Tampa.
Yeah, Tampa, Baltimore. You work your way around the league, the teams that are successful right now. But you also can look deeper. Okay, how long is this going to last, right? When one of the cards just going to collapse. But for us to look at the Dodgers and the Yankees in Boston, yeah, you look at their players, right?
Yeah.
And
Like
there's some
like,
takeaways and processes that you can learn from. But we also know what they're capable of doing in terms of resources and spending on free agency. So for us, pay attention to what's going on around you. Why are they successful right now? They don't seem to have an identity crisis. And I think that's kind of what you're pointing to here, where, all right, you got to know which lane you're in here. Right.
Yep.
And that's
you can't
where
choose. You can't swap the plan 2 or 3 years from now.
No. So yeah, is there sometimes a cyclical nature of this? There is, but there are ways to avoid that as well. You just have to be very disciplined.
Are there GMs in the game? I don't know who those would be. You could tell us that you could call them up and go, can we have an off-the-record conversation? How do you guys handle that? What kind of resources do you put into that and try and learn things?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
Guys are forthright.
Yeah. I mean, naturally, you're going to have some relationships that are perhaps deeper than others. Right. And that's the case for me. Obviously, first year here and in this position and still developing some relationships with general managers or presidents of other clubs. But through the years, whether it be through my playing days, front office, and now in this role, I think naturally you just start kind of clicking on, certain topics. And for me, I'm very straight. I try to be very straightforward and honest. Certainly you don't want to put your organization in a poor spot by opening up too much. But for example, we talk about trades, and talking about the players that we're giving up. I'm very honest about what do I think from a makeup standpoint, work ethic, where I see this going. And I expect the same in return. Now, not everyone operates that way. And I've got to recognize that.
Right.
But that catches up to you.
It catches up to you.
Because
there's always another deal.
The
there's always another player.
The next time
Absolutely.
around, I'm not going to trust.
And I know, I've talked to plenty of GMs that won't do deals with certain clubs because of those types of dealings. But in regards to learning, hey, what are you guys doing down here? What are you doing here? How did you go about this situation? Yeah, I think that's. Listen, are we all competitive? Are we trying to win? But it's also good for the game, right? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, it's about having talent on your major league club and putting together a strategy and going out there and execute. But I think helping each other out from time to time and sharing different ideas through their experiences, it's a healthy thing to do.
You said there's a lot to unpack, and there's I have a lot to unpack here too. Like I was talking to a buddy, earlier today actually, and I was telling him, we're gonna have Chris in our studio and stuff, and what would you ask him? He was like, I'll give you something. Like I'm closer to 50 than anything else, which is crazy, but we're in our mid 40s, and this is my buddy's fathers I grew up with. They're all asking me like, why? I'm apathetic. I've lost it. Like this, you're born into, this, spend your life in the game. baseball's something you're just given. Like, you don't have a choice. You're a Tigers fan or a White Sox fan or a Cubs fan, whatever, because that's the romance about baseball. But now you talked about understanding Sox fans. They've been through a rebuild. It didn't work out. Now they're being asked to do it again. They have egg on their face from a 41 and 121 season, right? And they're like, why should I care? You talked about the plan. You mentioned the plan in your last answer right there. I personally don't see a scenario where the White Sox are quote unquote competitive. And I'm talking about like for that last wild card spot until at least 2027. I'm not unfairly asking you to put a timestamp on it because it's backing you into a corner and everyone's going to hold the receipt to it. But what is the plan? And for fans who have that apathy, that are just like, you know what, my hands are up. Why should I? Like, I've seen enough. I've seen this time and time again. I have PTSD. What is the plan?
Yeah, well, I know one thing that's not.
I told you it's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, no, too stimulating for fans is when I talk about the infrastructure of an organization.
Right.
They want to talk about the major league team.
Who's playing first?
Yeah, and who are the stars? You know, who's going to hit a homer tonight or throw a perfect game or steal some bases?
Or why is it going to be different? Like, they want to know.
No,
why
I get it. All you know, and you know, it's. I'm comfortable answering it. I don't know if it's something that everyone wants to hear. But you talk about the pitching side. We're bringing Brian Bannister a year ago. Right, he's a guy that has a blueprint from the Red Sox. Took it to the Giants. You know, was fortunate to bring him here. He viewed this as an opportunity.
But then you had to obviously get Jerry to sign off on, hey man, I don't know what the revenues are, but I need to spend money to upgrade.
And that is the you know, if I sit there with Jerry and really put together why we need to do something, right? And you know, you talk about an ROI, right? It's like. But what was easy was Banny because he had just done it, right? So it was a tangible thing, and so you bring in a Brian Bannister, right? That pays attention to trends, right? What we were talking about, you know, 2 years ago might be different to what we can expect in the next year or two, right? And to have someone that has that awareness, intelligence, to help us stay, you know, ahead of things, quite honestly, but. Both identifying talent, developing talent, and then putting the plan to win ball games. But you get a Brian Bannister. You know, we've got a new head of international. Okay, we've got a new academy coming. We're making renovations to CBR. We've got a new major league manager. We've brought in a director of hitting in Ryan Fuller that was with Baltimore. Baltimore's gotten a lot of credit through the years for developing position players, and as they should. Well, you know, Fuller definitely he's what I would call a Brian Bannister equivalent on the hitting side. Okay, so got a head of pro scouting. We got an R&D department in which, you know, I think the general public opinion on our, you know, analytic kind of process would be, you know, do you guys even have computers? Right. Where, you know, we've got, you know, like 15 plus people in our R&D department. You know, we've restructured some things. We specialize in certain areas. You know, the baseball continuum, you identify players, you acquire players, you develop players. You've got your game planning, you've got your strategy, roster management, and then execution, right? And, you know, I talk about these foundational areas, you talk about analytics, sports science, they're all interconnected, right? Like there isn't, you know, you just don't have an analytic department and they just do analytic stuff, right? They're just waiting for you to check in. They're hitting all of those different buckets in the baseball ops continuum, right? And so to be able to develop that structure, that is the recipe for success. That is the blueprint. So what have I done in the last year? It's bringing individuals in and restructuring the organization. And so, yeah, is that going to show up with, you know, next season where we're fighting for the wild card or the division? I don't know, you know, but that, quite honestly, everything we've been working towards isn't for next season. It's for, you know, the season after that and the season after that for us to be sustainable. And I know that's a word that
I get
it's thrown out there, but that's
trust me. We've heard parades, sustained success.
Yeah, and
I've hit every one on my bingo card.
I think too, you know, you execute a trade like we did with Garrett here recently, and you bring in that talent, and then you can't just kind of sit back and just let this whole thing play out.
Hey, check it out, we're ranked third now.
You know, you got to stay on it. You cannot get complacent. And you got to continue to. I mean, on my way here, I was talking to the head of our international, and we're talking about, going out there and acquiring a player, right? Like, I mean, it's a fairly significant deal. And talking that through, it's a constant. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we're good to go now, guys.
Right.
And so that's the way we view it. And I mean, just like any successful business, you've got to establish the process. And I've got to continue to lead our group, hopefully get our story, our plan out to our fan base. And I know I'm going to have to do it over and over and over again, and that's okay. That's part of my job. And then you got to go out there and play well.
Quick follow-up to that. Was this something that you realized soon after you got the job? Like maybe like you expanded departments or you created departments, right? I mean,
quickly.
You didn't. Yeah. It's not just was like, okay, new role. I'm knocking these 5 guys out and putting 5. This was you're talking about we are lacking here. We are lacking here. We don't have this here. We don't have that. Is that true?
That is true. And I put together a committee, and the background of the committee, we had employees that had just been hired here, just different backgrounds of experience. We had employees that were outside of baseball ops, and they met weekly from April on, and I wasn't regularly part of those meetings. Hey guys, I'm tasking you to figure out what exactly is going on here and where do we need to go, right? And then at year's end, okay, they present to me, hey, we're light here, we've got to do this, we got to do this, we're really poor here.
And then you can take that to Jerry.
I can take it to Jerry. Obviously you formulate a plan to and there are different phases of it, but this wasn't just me going out there and diving in, because I mean, listen, there's always blind spots, right? I coming from player development, it's like, all right, like, you think you're doing well here, but are we really? We got to bring in someone else perhaps to hey, you know what? We tried that years ago and that's not working. So you're constantly evolving. You got to have a pulse on it. But yeah, essentially, I know it's an independent group, but we created a strategic planning committee to assess, present it to me, and then you take it further to go out there and execute it. So that has led to a lot of the changes in the last year. And that's the motivating stuff for me. Like I think that is the coolest part about being a general manager of a professional team, certainly the White Sox here. And it's this big picture. All right, how do we bring this whole thing together? To go out there and perhaps against all odds, right? You go through a season last year and you endure the pain of 41 wins and breaking this record. Gosh, that hurts, but man, like how cool will it be?
To be standing on the other side.
That's sports. It is. So,
do you think you have that kind of time?
I'm committed to doing it right. Okay. Let's put it that way.
Right.
I'm committed.
Jerry seems committed.
But that's fair. I think it's a fair question. I think it's a fair answer, though.
I think it's. Yeah. I mean, I listen.
You're
going back to the relationships that I have with other general managers and situations that they've been in.
Yeah.
Right. There's been plenty of times where they would admit I was running out of time, but I was not going to cut corners.
Okay.
Right. And sometimes you do run out of time.
Yeah.
And then sometimes,
but if you commit to what your plan was,
right.
at least you can walk away with that.
Yes. And don't get short-sighted and don't, you know what? Let's make that move.
Let's make a move 2 years too early.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And that burns you at some point. It does. So to have that awareness, and you have to have other people around you to like kind of hold you to that from time to time, because you're competitive and you've got, and kids, right? And as frustrated as they can get to watching some of these games.
So, all right, here's my question. So Garrett Crochet, you're thinking, I'm talking last summer. Should I move him? Let's see. Maybe I got something going here. Are you sitting in the bath? First of all, do you read your phone in the bathroom?
Yeah, I mean, I'm human.
Yeah. So are you sitting in the bathroom reading? What? What do you mean you have to have an extension? Like, how did that go down? Where were you? How'd you find out?
I was down in Arlington. I was in
Texas.
We were in Texas. Yeah, playing the Rangers. That was getaway day, if I remember correctly. And actually, I had my family with me. We were grabbing. It was around 10:30 in the morning, and we're eating kind of a late breakfast. And I get a call from a GM. I get a text from another GM. I'm like, what's going on
What's
right now?
the deal?
What's this? I know we were getting closer to the deadline, but we weren't there yet. And one of the GMs had sent me, a tweet that had been posted.
Twitter.
And, I was like, what is that? And you know what? And then I got another call from a GM, and I pick it up. And he's like, what's going on here? And I was like, I don't really know what you're talking about. What is going on here? And then, you dive into it more and more. And yeah, candidly was very, very upset. I walk outside the hotel and we were flying out that
Nikki,
day too. I don't know what we were flying out. We were flying back to Chicago. And mind you, I'm in Texas during the summer.
Yeah.
Right.
It's 200 degrees.
I'm pacing the courtyard, and I've got to get to the bottom of this. You talk to Garrett, you talk to the agent, you talk to the teams, you work through all of that. And obviously I explained some of this stuff because when it happened, it was obviously a bigger deal. It upset me. I mean, that's from a
fair.
Yeah. I mean, you do the best you can to have honest conversations with agents, with players, with opposing teams. And when you feel like, oof, you guys are approaching this a little different. What's going on here? Right. And so, what's done is done. And, they did it alter his market? You get asked that. I think ultimately, the teams that were really sincere were going to be sincere. And then
you made a good deal.
And then you had teams that perhaps were looking to not do a deal anyway, that made the decision for them. But yeah, talk about, something unexpected.
So you think if that doesn't come out, do you think he still gets traded to the Red Sox in the offseason, or do you think a deal's done? I mean, it's hard to speculate sometimes, but it seems that
it's one of those. I don't know. Did it change things? It did.
Yeah.
To what extent? I don't know. But I also, listen, I mean, we were talking to teams right up until, I won't say the final minutes, but certainly the last hour. And yeah, it got close. Does that mean we get closer or we get to somewhere? It's tough to know.
So what is that deadline like? Like, okay, we got 30 minutes left here and you're trying to make deals. How does that all go down?
It is.
How many phones you got going?
Yeah, it's and that, you talk about trying to or needing to establish a process, right? And prior to, let's say, certainly the last couple hours of potentially doing a deal, there's marked interest already. You've got a pretty good idea of, because there's kind of conversations that especially on the bigger ones, I'm sure, in other people's experiences, it hasn't always been the case, but I'd say majority of the time, that this player has these 5 teams that are interested and so on and so forth. So, you create these kind of scenarios, some different concepts. Because quite honestly, if you don't, I mean, it's just, it's
right.
It's wild, and you can't make a sound decision because you don't want to get emotional on it. Right. You want this to be as objective as possible. And, on the Crochet one, that had a chance to get emotional based on what had happened. And that's where, you got to find your governor and, all right, what do we need to be met? And if that's not met, we're not doing it. And that's how it applied there.
So you tell someone on your staff, make sure you restrain me here because I'm emotional right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if I'd specifically tell him that. I would like to think that I can stay under control and think objective. But I mean, that's why you surround yourself with people that you trust. But mind you, like you're focusing on one deal, and then this other deal pops up, and then this deal, and you've got medical reviews, and you got to figure out the contracts.
You're like, oh shit, I got 15 minutes to revisit that.
Yeah. One. So you got one guy that's handling this. So there is a lot of, it is, it's exciting, right? Like,
it's a rush.
And then you've got other clubs that, I mean, I think Garrett was probably holding up a lot of, eventual deals. Are you guys getting this deal done yet? Because I think we're next or whatever, all those types of things, controlling the market, so to speak. But I'm glad we didn't, pull the trigger at that time, just because, I look back to getting the deal done with the Red Sox. And I've said this publicly, and I mean it, at least when it comes to, Kyle Teal and Braden Montgomery, being that they were, former first round picks from the 24 and 23 draft, we've done a lot of homework on those guys from a character standpoint. And obviously there's, performance that drives it the most, but, there was a high level of comfort with those players. Cause, we considered those guys at, each. Yeah. So so to have them, part of that, was exciting, but, you're looking at, Kyle, catching, right? I mean, if you get the catching position right, gosh, it can change the trajectory of an organization.
The White Sox haven't developed a catcher since Ron Karkovice.
Oh, that's a
so
that's
all
a long time. Yeah,
all of the people who are like, why would you get Kyle Teal in a deal? We have Edgar Carroll. Because the White Sox haven't developed a catcher since Ron Karkovice.
Well, I don't know if that's why, but
the catching position, as you said, could it's the quarterback in some ways,
right?
If you have two of them, what an awesome
it's gold. No, it really is, and we think both of them can be very good major league players. And I definitely felt it the most when we acquired Kyle Teal. Talk about the phone, ringing off the hook for both of our catchers. You're like, well, now that you got two at the upper levels,
which one?
And it just, I mean, every offseason, I guess you kind of feel it. You see, so-and-so signed with, that guy got that much money, or that, it's everyone's looking for to fill that role and to find the right, battery mate. So, but yeah, I mean, you're talking about Kyle Teal, he's a really good athlete. I mean, he's played other positions. I won't say he's new to the position, but he's a guy that's just getting back there. But man, what he's capable of doing. And if you look at, I want to say July on, maybe late June, from a framing standpoint, it was one of the best in the minor leagues. And I know that there was an intervention, with him to help on the catching front, but the guy that to take to it that quickly, let alone, some offense from that position as well is a pretty good indicator. And then you have Edgar Carrow, that guy's been a performer, and he's switch.
And maybe one's the first. We don't know. Like
you don't know. You really don't ultimately, and you obviously.
Good problem to have.
It's a very good problem to have. And then Braden Montgomery, we considered him at 5. We did. And I know that there was, going throughout the spring, hey, is this guy going to go 1-1, and all, and they had his injury. But you're talking about, Stanford A&M performance, switch hitter, huge arm, power, great kid. Like,
I like it. I mean, he's a pro.
He's very advanced. I think professionally, mentally, I think he's prepared for this. We'll get around to more come spring training, but I in a return, I guess ultimately everyone's would like upper level return, right? Closer to the big leagues. We were just looking for honestly the highest ceiling guys that we could find to inject into our organization. And it just so happened in that deal that they were, fairly upper level players, right? Everyone's AA or up. Obviously Braden's just getting started. So, does that accelerate some things? I think it does, ultimately, just because of, we're talking about a college performer, Teal that's already in AAA. And then Chase Mydroth, who, you don't see him on top 100 lists. I don't want to speak for the Red Sox, but you get to know kind of how they feel about players in negotiations. That one gave him just as much heartburn as he
stings.
Yeah, he's sneaky.
He gets on base.
He gets on base. He can play all 3 positions. Gamer. The guys over there, I know that they were very uncomfortable moving him. and he was an important piece of the deal. But a guy that he's got a full season in AAA. I mean, he'll come into spring training, and hopefully he's breaking with the club, and we'll figure that out. But so I mean, I guess truly, you look back at where we were a year ago, and what we were able to accomplish with some of these players in terms of reinvesting in the organization to help build us forward. Yeah, there's plenty to be proud of infrastructure wise. And then, we have really worked our way towards the top from a farm system standpoint. But you got to continue to go.
So you mentioned there are GMs that, I'll talk to anybody, but we have a good relationship. How about you and the Cubs? Because there's always been this perception, those teams that, we'll trade David Arnsma for Neil Kotz. But other than the Quintana deal.
How'd that work out, Kip?
I thought that was a horrible deal for the Cubs the day it was made. I said to Theo, you just paid Mercedes. You gave up Mercedes. You got a Buick back. What are you doing? He was not happy with me. But that's beside the point. Would you make a huge – you had Garrett Crochet or whoever it is, would you make a deal with Jed? Or, we try not to.
I mean, I'm willing to do a deal. It goes back to there's different ways to look at it too. Yeah, maybe you're giving a helping their major league club immediately, right? But we also took some depth, some pieces that could perhaps be better than what we're giving them.
Well, that was like the Quintana deal.
So that catches up to a club as well, right? Correct. I mean, it's a similar conversation with in-division clubs, right? Would it have been tough to watch Garrett Crochet for the next 2 years pitch for? Yeah, that's not great, But ultimately, if I
see that, I don't get we've both the White Sox have won, the Cubs have won. To me, that tax has officially been. I could care less anymore. If you had told me
there are a lot of fans that don't feel like you.
Well, I guess there's a lot of fans that haven't seen both win either.
Well, I'm not looking to sterilize the rivalry by any stretch. I'm not.
It's a cool rivalry.
Yeah, no, I think it's really special. And but ultimately when you're doing these deals, I think it still can hurt them, right? At some point too, even though it might be painful at the time. Mm-hmm. So but yeah, to in a conversation with Jed to let him know that there might be a little bit of a Cubs tax.
Yeah.
I mean, it might come up.
Sure, that's 100%. You guys have a good relationship.
We do. Yeah. I like Jed. He's we our kids are similar ages, and we're quasi neighbors. So he's pacing the neighborhood. I'm pacing the neighborhood. Both of us don't like to sit still.
The funny thing would be if you were both on your cell phone discussing a deal and walking in the neighborhood.
It's probably already happened.
I'm over here.
Yeah.
Did you? How did you? There were so many people that have said, "Man, Chris Getz has to win the Garrett Crochet deal in order to make it. It's going to make or break his legacy." How do you? A, do you hear that noise? And B, how do you table that noise, knowing I'm just trying to get the best deal for the future of the Chicago White Sox and the plan that you've created?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly was never about me, right? It just. I mean, that just got on as truth.
But do you hear
now
that
the
noise?
Pressure that I carried was I knew what I could get at the deadline. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, now that we're in the off season, because obviously there's a gap.
Yep.
Right. How does that change the market? Is this going to look the same? Is it going to feel the same? That was what you're carrying.
Did you carry pressure too that he's pitching and it's late August? Oh, please, dear God, don't get hurt. Please, dear God, don't get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're always running that risk.
Right.
I mean, these are pitchers.
This was especially.
It was an important one. Yeah. It was. But I there's just so many measurables along the way to make sure that he's not breaking down. Right. You got the pitch quality, you got biomechanic information, you've got daily clinical testing, you've got his feedback, right? And I mean, it was just amazing the way that he responded. Were we a little bit more measuring towards the remainder of the year after of course,
obviously,
yeah, we weren't,
that would be smart.
We knew what was at stake here. We did, but even at the deadline in your this offseason, okay, thinking that you have to exceed what was offered at the deadline. You know, I was still pretty comfortable going into the season with him as well.
Mhm.
I was. I mean,
because
I'm confident that he's going to go out
Put the
there
workload-
and
yeah,
perform.
Yeah.
you had 2 years of control.
2 years of control. You know, and you look at past deals throughout the league, and obviously there's you know, you get an idea of the market, what it looks like at the deadline, the off season, you know, and you're kind of weighing, okay, what is a year and a half? What is a year left? I mean, it's pretty rigid market. Teams operate, you know, pretty similarly. You know, they do. Now you might get one that's feeling the heat and willing to extend themselves
A little bit.
that's an outlier, but that's not always the case. It isn't. But you don't know what it's going to be like when you get there, right? I mean, even this past deadline, there were a couple clubs that have a reputation of being overly aggressive. They just happen to not be in the hunt or in a position to, you know, really make a move. Okay, you eliminate them, and now you're dealing with, you know,
pretty set market.
yeah. So you just don't know what the future is going to hold.
In terms of TV, there's so much out there that Bally's this, Diamond that, and is it a real thing that teams are dealing with declining TV revenue and it affects how much you can spend?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not in the weeds of what's been declined by clubs. Obviously, there's, you know, fair amount of negotiating going on, posturing. I don't know. I just that's not my world. Now, talking to other clubs, it's definitely affecting spending. It's affecting a lot of clubs, and then there's some that it's not. I mean, you look at the spending in free agency thus far, and yeah, there's been some clubs, and then there's been some that haven't spent it all.
Right.
And so, you know, we certainly all hope that this gets figured out and fairly quickly throughout the league. It's an interesting one. I don't know enough. It seems like we should be able to figure something out.
Yeah, a lot of smart heads.
Yeah, I mean, but until then, you know, these are businesses being run, and you know, when you're accustomed to you know, bringing in this amount of revenue based, you know, from this company, and that's just it. You take a hit,
No question.
You know, it's going to affect how you're spending. So that's just the reality of things.
One more on Garrett from me. I was adamant the entire time that this trade, it was chips in the night. Like Garrett's 2 years of control versus where the Chicago White Sox are. There was no match. It just, unfortunately, it was just, this wasn't going to be the girl that walked in the room the same time you were. That's the way I compared it to. You know, there's a lot of people, and this just was bad timing. But was extension ever discussed?
Well, you know, and I'll get into that part, but also you look at the Red Sox, for example, right? With where they're at and where they need to go. And you watch kind of free agency play out a little bit, and, you know, Max Fried goes to the Yankees, right? For X amount of $215 or so million. And then, so they're looking to capitalize with a team that, like, okay, this just kind of makes sense, right? Based on, you know, where Garrett is and where we are as an organization. Okay. It's like markets meet, right? So, but in terms of extent, I mean, gosh, you look at what Max Fried got, right? A
lot of coin.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, good pitcher, obviously.
But an injury history.
Sure. I mean, listen, you've at certain points of kind of, let's call it your journey, you've got to go out there and do deals like that, right?
Yeah.
Potentially, right? I mean, if of course the resources are there. We did have some discussions, and, you know, obviously we didn't match up, didn't make sense.
Was it clear, like, early on, like, this is going to just go its separate way? Like, there was not a lot.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious. You know, different sites. And that's okay. Garrett deserves that. That right. He's, you know, he's been through a fair amount, right? He's had some injuries. He had this tremendous runway this past year. Do I think the arrow is pointing up for him? I do. I truly do. You know, it just didn't make sense, you know, with where we were at and what his desire for what he was looking for. But then you look at some of these where free agency is right now. I mean, it's Yeah, I think we made the right decision.
I thought you were exceptional. I called you. I said, I thought you were great you were on the radio with me and Jonathan Hood. And you were very honest. And you said, look, there'll be a time that we will spend in free agency, but that time is not right now. And I remember the Cubs signed Edwin Jackson when they were bad. Cubs were terrible. And Theo publicly said, we jumped the gun. You can't spend until you're ready to spend. You subscribe to that philosophy?
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. Does that raise the floor a little bit? Mm-hmm. It does at some point when you're looking to add something that you really need to get you to a level where you're 90 plus wins and you're going for the World Series. Yeah, that's the time usually. And if you jump too early, that's
pay a price.
You do. It shows up at some point. So you've got to be in. And also, you don't necessarily know what your needs are going to be when that time comes.
Correct.
I think that's probably oftentimes the trouble that you run into. We're still forming, we're still shaping, we're still developing.
Damn, I wish I wouldn't have bought the shortstop because I need to go get another one start.
Yeah. And if it was, as easy as, all right, well, we'll just trade that guy for that guy. It's sometimes the pitcher's not there. Sometimes the Garrett Crochet perhaps is not there. That matches up with your kind of timetable. So there are a lot of different variables.
Yeah, I got a kind of a 2-for-1 here. I mean, the White Sox in the past have made a lot of insular hires. You're on that list, and I think a lot of people were pissed at the process or maybe lack thereof that got you the job. The one thing I admire a lot about you, but one thing I admire about you is that you have gone kind of away from that strategy and brought all of these voices and ideas in from other organizations. You're really the first person in the organization to do that in probably the last 3 decades. So you have this pressure and in the criticism, maybe some of it fair from fans going, oh, look, he had the guy right next to him, etc. And you said, I'm not straying. I'm not going to let that noise bother me. And you've added all, I think about Phil Nevin. I think the Will Venable hire is a smart hire.
I know him. He's awesome.
You look around how he's respecting the game. I talked to Bochy about him. Everyone loves him. And I just think there's a lot of smart things. And it's, again, I'm not kissing his ass because he's sitting next to me, folks. This is something, if you really dig between and read between the lines here and read the book and not just the summary here, you're doing things differently than people in the past. How have you been able to kind of, and I mentioned the noise prior, but I mean, you probably heard some of that about the process when you got the job. And you've said, you know what? I want to bring in Bannister and I want to bring in Watson and I want to bring in Venable and I want to, Phil Nevin was a managerial candidate. Screw that. I want him too. And I want to bring in Giannis. How is that? I don't know. Maybe I don't want to say helped you, but I don't know if it's quieted some of the noise, but why has there been more openness maybe from Jerry to do that?
Well, just to get quick, funny story. It's funnier now than I guess during the moment. But so when I got named to be the GM, it was also coincided with my 40th birthday, and my wife actually had planned a surprise party
the same day you got named.
No way.
Yeah, it was an off day, right? And so she had started planning it like in May, right? We had people flying in and all that, and so a couple days prior, when I'm like, I think, we're going to have the press conference on this day. She looked with a smile, but also like, oh my gosh, that's I was planning a surprise party for you. So
that's awesome.
We put it, but I bring that up because I had close friends coming into town, and this set of friends, they were the guys that I grew up with. So and at least with us, like we give each other a pretty hard time.
Oh yeah,
right.
Most.
So we do the press conference, and it's a busy day, obviously an exciting day, but it's a busy day. Although the party we put a pause to it, right? We still had like a dinner at a local restaurant, and 3 of my buddies who like went golfing that day. And they may have had a couple pops too, so they were coming in kind of hot. And he plugged in, and one buddy, he was like, "Do not go on Twitter. It's a bloodbath."
That's good. What a great friend.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. The honesty, it doesn't.
Self-deprecates.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
come
I'm
on.
in it. Now.
I it's just the reality of things. And named to the position, I talk about being different. It's not for the sake of being different. You feel like, all right, we do need different ideas. We do need to be
not
restructured.
working. We got to fix this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And you talk about some of the foundational areas and finding the right people to execute in those areas to help build this and get it right, get it to the finish line. So it was for me. Gosh, when you have this plan, you map it out. How do we get there? Jerry's been really great. I mean, I got on his truth in regards to, obviously he needs to understand the plan. And well, how are we can we do it with the current group? Well, I think we need to make changes here. And he's been really supportive on that. So, I can't really speak to the past. I can't. Obviously you speak to some of the people and how long they've been here and in certain roles and all those types of things.
This even prior to like the group
sure.
before you.
Yeah.
This is
All I know is, I've tried to identify really talented individuals, and got to know some of these people, just being in the game and talking to people and, hey, who's the best at pitching? Who's the best at hitting? Who's really good at getting deep dive information on players, who can help modernize our international process, and you gather that information and then you go out there and you try to bring those individuals in. And then as a group, I've got to, really shape this thing. How are we going to operate? How are we going to communicate? How do I condition everyone to understand what I'm looking to do as well, right? I mean, we're learning each other. So, it's been really enjoyable. Obviously, last year very tough, but you look up and like, what have we done in a year from an infrastructure standpoint?
Right.
And it's like, all right, I think we're in a much better place. And this will be my last piece on this, but hiring a manager, right? Going through that process and getting a Will Venable that has got a tremendous reputation.
He's a great dude.
Yeah.
I mean, his resume, like the people he's learned under, is about as good as you can.
I'm not so, I didn't ask Will this, but when you get, let's say we were hiring a manager last offseason, that manager would have to be just kind of basing his decision on my ideas.
Yeah.
Right. Versus I can point to some things, right? Like things are more tangible, things are in place. And they feel that through the interview process, right? Because they've got those same questions, right? We've played against the White Sox. We've heard these stories. Well, this is true. This isn't. But they've got, do I think that they trust me? Sure. But, when you're actually in there and you get to know and you see how a process is executed and how thoughtful it is, I think that puts you in a good position to bring in
talked to Brandon Hyde, who he was a coach when they won.
Sure.
It. He lived right near where you're living now.
Yeah.
He's a great dude. And I said to him, okay, you take over a job which was in a similar situation to what you took over with the White Sox. He's like, it's a complete and total rebuild. But he said, the people I went to work for said, we have your back.
Yeah.
Just do your job every day to the best of your ability. We're not judging you on wins and losses. And now, of course, he's got a team that they didn't win it, but they're competitive enough to try to. Do you talk to Will? Hey, man, I understand the situation you're in. Here's what I need from you.
Yeah, I mean, he knows the situation we're in. And now he also knows where this is headed based on, what he has learned through the interview process and certainly since he's been hired. Now, right now you're prepping for spring training. You're shaping the roster. All right, what are we looking to accomplish both individually for the players, but also as a team? What are our objectives? That becomes so much of the focus, right? I think where things can get a little dicey is when we're chasing different things, right? If we start chasing different things, that's where I think you're going to have trouble. Now, great thing about Will, and I think, I know just in our relationship in this kind of small period of time, man, he's easy to talk to. He is. He's got this demeanor, this calmness, this intellect and depth. Listen, baseball can be a very emotional game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it beautiful too, but also extremely painful as well. He's got a demeanor that's going to allow him to navigate perhaps something that would be a little bit more painful for someone else. And so I do think that, and in just going through it, I mean, having conversations about potential acquisitions, hires, what we want spring training to look like, dealing with this or that. I mean, it's, I pick up the phone and it's like, all right, well, hopefully he's not too busy and, thinking it's going to be a 5-minute conversation. You look up and it's like, I've just been talking to him for an hour. Right. I mean, it's so natural.
It's a good collaboration.
Yeah. And I think, I really care about Will. And I think we're going to have so many people that are going to want Will to do well as well. And I think that's really important, both players and staff and front office. I think he's the right guy.
I was I've talked so much about, we've talked a lot about all the changes and stuff and with people and positions and additions. And the only thing I was personally a little surprised there wasn't a lot of change. Obviously the managerial, those top two spots were changed, the bench coach, the manager spot, but there was a lot of continuity amongst the staff. Can you discuss why keep Ethan Katz, why keep Marcus Timms? I know you brought a couple of guys up, Justin Jersley.
Grady stayed.
Grady. That was, Chris said that at the end of last year. Like, we always knew that Grady was going to be a part of this staff, which I think was really good. It's good for those young players that went through that last year. But yeah, just talk about the continuity in some of these positions.
Well, you get, Marcus, for one, last year was his first year. It's like, all right, we're really going to just place blame. And in the hitting coach position, I mean, gosh, it is. Yeah. And you look around the league and how often it's being, turned over. All right, we're perhaps going about this the wrong way.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's like, I think the lifespan of these positions, it's like a year and a half, 2 years. All right, we're either we're going about it the wrong way.
Well, like a veteran doesn't hit what a coach is.
Yeah, that's right. So now what do you try to do? Improve the support, perhaps, right? And that, I pointed to, Banny and Fuller as equivalents. It's like, all right, well, let's, the day-to-day of a hitting coach, and these jobs have expanded, and you've got, 1 or 2 assistants, and you got a front office impacting it, perhaps, but it is, you're working with a roster, you're game planning for that particular night or that particular series. Sometimes you need someone that's kind of 20,000 feet out, and it's like, all right, where are the trends here, right? Where are we headed towards here? It can be a little tricky when you're in it day in and day out to pay attention to that and get that player ready for that night. So, all right, well, let's set that up. Let's see what that looks like. Let's see how players respond to that. Let's see how the organization responds to that. So that's, that was decision on the hitting front, quite honestly. It's like, all right, well, let's, before we just like, oh, well, let's try this person now and hope that we're going to make all these strides forward. Let's slow down. Let's at least put ourselves in a position for success first. So, and Ethan, and I know he's been here for a couple of years, but man, we've also accomplished a lot. He has with some of these pitchers that have come through here. You look at it as a team, and it's like, all right, you get a little frustrated with maybe, bullpen performance here, or this starter's not performing. There's still a lot to point to that has, been successful there.
Eric Fetty, Jonathan Cannon.
I mean, look at Dylan Cease and Giolito.
Like Eric Crochet. I mean, if we're going to sit there and be pissed about the hitters and be like, it's the coach, well, then you got to give it back to when it's actually working too.
Yeah. So once again, it's like, all right, let's press the brakes here a little bit. Banny and Ethan have a really strong relationship. They were together in San Francisco. Are there ways to improve? Of course. Now, Banny Ethan and Weiser, that was also their first year together as a group as well. The trio of them. So, we've got a new bench coach. We bring up Jersh. Bourgeois, it was his first year last year, on the staff. And obviously talk about Grady. So, although there is some continuity, there was also, some changes that we felt like needed to happen. You don't make change for the sake of making change. You want to know, all right, what are we trying to solve here? Right. And I didn't want to get ahead of ourselves because I wanted to clearly identify what the problem is so I can put a plan together. All right, do we have the right people for it? And, that's what led to bringing some individuals back and making some changes in other areas.
Perfect vacation for you.
Oh,
You're going
he's
to
going
get away.
rapid firing.
Perfect vacation. Is it skiing? Is it a beach? Europe? What is it?
Well, we're just coming off a skiing trip, and we went out west, and I've got 3 kids and fairly young, and they're learning to ski. And I don't want to act like I'm a pro skier by any stretch. Gosh, I mean, we got a lot of snow, having the kids out there. And also like you're getting a workout in too. Sometimes you go, there's a time for a beach vacation, right? Beach and pool.
That's right.
But you
were skiing and I was in the Bahamas.
There's a time for that. There really is. But I'm just coming off the ski trip. So I'm gonna go with that one right now.
All right. So I guess we're gonna go to rapid fire here, Cap.
Yeah.
All right. It doesn't have to be rapid. Okay. So you can't choose the White Sox. You can't choose the University of Michigan. Favorite team / fandom.
You put me on the spot here.
Yeah, that's why I'm eliminating some of the easy ones.
I grew up in Detroit.
I know.
So
you can say, I think there's a lot of Bears fans that are kind of.
I mean, listen, I don't want to say it was a painful youth because, watching football as a Lions fan growing up was never like necessarily an easy thing. Now to see what they've done, right, with Dan Campbell and their,
I love that too.
I think there's a lot to learn that can be applied to what I'm doing. I like the Lions. I do. I like the Lions, and I may have been there on Sunday night.
There we go.
Wow, that is awesome.
Sunday night.
That was awesome.
Face paint, second row, Chris Getz.
No. I was with the true fans.
You've had a pretty good run here. You're with the true fans. Oh, upper tank. I like it.
So I have a hat at the house. It says grit in Honolulu blue. It's a white hat, the Honolulu, because the book, have you ever read the book?
Mm.
Okay, so Pete Carroll, who's actually coming to Chicago tomorrow and interview with the Bears. The book
I like
Grit is all about you can be the most talented cat in the world. If you don't have grit, you're not going to make it. And that's Dan Campbell's mantra. And they have a test that they will give employees, players, the grit test. I love Dan Campbell. I think that guy's
me too.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, maybe he can be the next. Maybe he could be one of your managers after Will Venable wins 3 World Series. Go. What do you got?
You walk into a hotel room. You're on the road. You're by yourself. First channel you turn on the TV.
Gosh, I go to YouTube.
Beautiful.
Pulls up the
I don't know
recap.
if that's really true. Yeah. It's probably Netflix, to be honest with you.
Pulls up the recap. I like it. All right. So we all know your wife, Nikki, was on season 23 of The Amazing Race, finished 6th. Okay. You're both on Survivor. You and your wife are both on Survivor. Who lasts longer?
Yeah, she definitely has some toughness to her. She handles stress well. You know what? I haven't watched a ton of Survivor.
Me either, but it's surviving outlast.
I think I'm gonna choose myself on that one.
Ooh.
So
Sorry, Nikki.
So my wife just turned. I shouldn't say my wife just turned 60 in October. For her 60th birthday, she climbed Kilimanjaro.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and made it to the top. 8 days, tents.
Needless to say, you'd go with your wife over yourself.
100%.
Oh, that's
as you're talking about enjoying being on the beach.
Yeah.
This
like,
guy.
Do you want to?
She runs laps around.
Do you want to climb it with me? I'm like, absolutely not. I'll hold the house down with the dogs. Good luck.
Cat freaks out if he's got no what. The power went out here a couple of days ago for like 30 minutes, and he was like, "What do we do?" I was like, "We wait."
I went and got a
What do
manicure
you mean?
before you came in today.
Like, the ComEd's outside. He's like, the Wi-Fi's down. I'm like, I know. It's
I literally
okay.
came from the manicurist. Coming here.
See what I mean?
Yeah, no judgment.
It is what it is.
All right, most famous person you've ever met. Which is, it's
Yeah.
it's subjective.
Barack Obama.
That's
Pretty
one.
good.
Pretty famous.
It's a pretty good one.
Pretty famous.
So I walk up to him. His brother-in-law was the coach at Northwestern, the assistant. Then he was the head coach at Brown, then the head coach at Oregon State. Barack is at the Northwestern Brown game. I walk up to him. He's got a Sox hat on. And I said, excuse me, Senator. He was the senator at the time. I said, introduced myself. I said, I've interviewed you a couple of times. Your hat's a little dirty. I can get you a way cleaner Cubs hat. And he looked at me. He's like, I would never put that on my head, ever.
Proof.
Yeah. I'm like,
I mean, in the
you're a diehard. I love it.
All-Star game, you switched
Not
to
a
the MLB Cup.
politician. He's a Sox guy.
You got one song, regardless of scenario, you have to listen to. One, it doesn't matter. You need to be pumped up. You're on a beach. You're skiing. Wherever you have one choice, one song. What is it?
I want to go back to like my some of my walkout music here and there.
What was it? I don't remember.
I think I went Green Day Holiday.
Okay. Oh
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
That's minority of.
Yeah.
Green Day. Okay.
It's my friends or family would tell me like my music taste in both to really dive into musicians and song. Like I that part of my brain I think just never was fully turned on.
Pizza, deep dish, thin crust. Are you a pizza guy?
I love thin crust pizza. I mean, it's like dessert. It's dangerous.
Loves a tavern.
When the doorbell rings at like 10:30, kids are in bed by that time. It's like, who's the? It's like they know.
The pizza guys come for that.
That's right.
Guilty pleasure.
Guilty pleasure. I mean, hobby wise, it's golf, but that you don't.
What's your handicap? Because you let a lot of people don't know. Like you were that was your two sport. You were two sport athlete. You played golf. Right? How did you manage that? Was that fall sport?
I did play. I played football as well.
Oh,
not football and golf. Football was the best. Or I'm sorry, golf was one of the better sports to play in high school because you got out of school so much. Yeah. It was like a 1:30 exit or Friday tournaments.
Guilty pleasure golf.
I'm not able to play a lot. Obviously, whether it be work schedule along with having 3 kids, telling the wife and kids I'm going to play 5 hours of golf.
Yeah, that's a tough play.
That is welcome.
That's a tough play.
But yeah, I mean, the best I've been is a 5. I'm not a 5 right now. I'm not.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. It was what I learned when I say late in life, it wasn't late in life, but I think it was like 13. And I learned quickly, to the point I'm like, oh, I think I got a chance.
You play lefty?
Pretty decent.
I don't think I've gotten any better.
Peaked at 13.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Greatest sports moment that you've ever witnessed?
Well, I grew up in Detroit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Game 7, double overtime, Red Wings, Blues, Iserman, top shelf, place just erupted.
Wow.
In the Joe?
I was there. 7th grade. I believe it was 7th grade. It was definitely middle school.
That's amazing.
Oh, it was pretty good.
Oh, that's pretty good. Even though it was the Red Wings and whatever. You grew up in Detroit.
Where I lived. I mean,
Detroit. That's why I don't care I'm going to save my Bears question for you here in a second, but you have 3 career big league homers. Who was your first one off of? Where?
Bronson Arroyo in Cincinnati.
Yep.
Way back.
June 19th, 2009.
Way back.
Way back. It was barely out in a park that I don't think that ball leaves anywhere else. Yeah.
Here was the lineup that day for the White Sox. Scott Pasenik, Alexi Ramirez, Jermaine Dye, Paul Konerko, Ramon Castro, who was the AJ did pinch hit, Chris Getz, Brian Anderson, who is part of this podcast, Gordon Beckham, and then of course that's when the pitchers hit, Jose Contreras. It's a pretty damn good lineup. Who played shortstops for the Reds that day?
So that would have been 2009. Was it Giannis?
Paul Giannis, the director of player
That's
development
good.
for the Chicago
Yeah.
White Sox.
It all, yeah, and that's why he's the director of player development. I
And
just
that's-
want to, did you remember that day, Paul? And he said yes. I'm like,
He
you're
was 0 for 3. That is not something you find on Wikipedia. I told him I had a good
Oh my God.
research stat
That's phenomenal.
that I pulled, but I love that. By the way, you never hit a home run at home. Do you know that? In 3, you hit 3 homers,
All on the road.
all on the
Not
road.
true.
Not true.
Yeah,
Do you hit 3 career home runs
correct. In the big leagues.
in the big leagues? I'm talking about big league home
I
runs.
understand. I hit one against Jeremy Guthrie.
Oh, was that at home?
US Cellular.
Oh, I
which
thought
is
that was
now
at Baltimore.
the rate.
July 19th, my anniversary. I have Jeremy Guthrie right here at Baltimore. I was thinking if there was a trend because you only had a home run on the 19th, and then you home run on April 16th for the Royals. The last one I had to follow that with the White Sox. You were traded from Martin. You only played 117 games for the White Sox. A lot of people don't know. You have to go back and look. You had 25 stolen bases in your first full season with the White Sox. You were on the all-rookie team. There was some like tops all-rookie team. 24 extra base hits. I think you led all rookies. You had 39 the rest of the career. Did you feel like you got shortchanged? Like you were just going
short. Oh,
short
short change in
like-
what way? Like
meaning
I
like-
deserve more.
No. Meaning like, had you never been traded for the White Sox, this thing was starting to click. You could have been the.
At the time when I got traded, I felt like I was getting shortchanged.
That's
What was that
that
call
was the
like?
nice way of asking that question.
Were
Yeah,
you
no.
married yet?
No.
What
no.
is that call like?
I was,
You've been traded.
it was a
He had
day
a
after.
good year. His
It was the
first year.
day after the World Series. Which is,
Wow.
if I remember correctly, the first day you can make a trade.
It
I mean,
is.
Get
it
him
was
out
like
of
you
here.
couldn't. I mean,
Couldn't get rid of it quick
gosh,
enough.
growing up in Midwest, in that age too, everyone migrated to Chicago work-wise. So I had a lot of friends here, and I felt very connected to the city. And so, I was disappointed. It took a minute. Maybe it took longer than that, considering the future performance. I'd like to blame it on a bigger ballpark, but I think it was. Yeah, I won't break down the mechanics of a swing for you.
So you had 3 career home runs. Dwayne Kuiper, remember Dwayne Kuiper?
Yeah.
He had 1, and he hit it off Steve Stone, which drives
Thank you,
Stoney
David.
insane.
Yeah.
And shortly thereafter, Kuiper came up to face him again, and Stoney's like, "I'm getting this dude out," and he hit a triple. Almost went out again.
Oh,
Those
gosh.
are the only
Yeah,
2.
Love that stuff.
Yeah, drives Stoney insane.
For that third home run, we were in Atlanta, okay, and I had the longest, drought without hitting a homer. The active big leaguers.
It was years, I think, right? At that point. Now you had played like there were some
Easy,
injuries.
easy.
There were some.
All right.
Oh, God.
Hang on.
Stop.
So- wait, hang on.
It wasn't a regular player. It was
To be fair, 64 games in 12, 78 games in 13.
Right.
Like I'm
right.
that's fair.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, there was
pretty much
injuries.
a pinch hitter.
There was
Uh,
injuries. There was
yeah.
injuries too.
No, sure. But okay, so usually, when you go on the road and you look at the jumbotron or the it's right in front of you,
Yeah,
right?
there's
And it's
some
usually
stat.
something positive,
Right.
right? Oh, Chris Getz, he's from Detroit, Michigan. Was all Big Ten or something along
Yeah.
those lines. Oh no, not this day. Not this day. It decided to throw that on there that I had the longest inactive players of hitting a home run. And you got to be kidding.
Like, this is bullshit.
We're in Atlanta, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to take full hack. All
Well,
right,
you went up there thinking home run.
swear to God.
Only time in your life in the big leagues.
Only time, second time in the big leagues. One time I had a chance for the cycle. Of course,
okay.
the home run wasn't
okay.
there. And I flew out to left or something. That time, I was just
Pissed.
I was unbelievable. So
Yeah,
I went.
that's a BS stat.
I got after one off of Chris Medlin,
It
and
was off of Medlin.
right fielder didn't move. I think it might have
Like,
been
you
Hayward.
know it
I think
was
it might have been Hayward. I think it was. Yeah,
Jay Hay.
yeah,
Wow.
Wow.
That ball smoked.
yeah.
An
I
angry
mean,
swing.
unbelievable. I
Did
still,
you know
Yeah,
you got it
that's
right away?
that's BS.
oh yeah, yeah.
You like,
That's not
that was
right.
like that was before. Yeah, it was definitely off Medlin because I looked up all 3. That was before bat flips were cool, but that would have been worth looking up.
I
at,
didn't-
Like the,
Yeah, well,
That
yeah,
would've been
I
worth
didn't know how to
looking-
react.
Yeah.
Like, there certainly wasn't going to do
Like,
a bad
oh,
flip.
wow. I
Yeah,
just
it's
got
one of
that
those like it cleared the fence by a fair amount, but I was still sprinting like it was going to be an infield single or something.
All right, so put on your Detroit fans cap here, okay? I don't know if you have a relationship with Ryan Poles. You are the GM of the Chicago Bears. Who are you hiring as head coach?
Not Ben Johnson.
Because you want to keep him in Detroit.
Oh.
See, I want Mike Vrabel.
Yeah,
I think Mike would be. I mean, I don't know Mike, but
but you're just as a football fan. Who are you hiring as your head coach?
Well,
there's no wrong
should have
answer.
been, John Harbaugh.
Jim Harbaugh. Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
not
yeah.
John, Jim.
Yeah. And then
Should
that
have
would have
been.
been a great allegiance for
Yeah.
you. It's the Michigan.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I know. It should have been.
Yeah. It probably should be Johnson.
He's pretty good.
Did you see what Josh Allen said today about Joe? Like, what has Joe Brady done for you? Like, can you see other teams interested in him? He goes, he's done absolutely nothing for me. But he said it. He's like, please don't like that. No other team should even call. He's done absolutely nothing. He was being facetious about it.
He wants to keep it.
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I look at Detroit sports and being a Blackhawks fan, hated the Red Wings, hated that they went to the East and the Hawks stayed in the West, and the rivalry kind of died, right?
Yeah, no, gosh, Red Wings. What through the late 90s, I mean, it was phenomenal.
It was insane.
Well, we couldn't even watch him here in Chicago, so that was another.
So
they were.
me and I are working at NBC Sports Chicago. We get a call. Hey, Isaiah Thomas has a new champagne line out. Can he come in and do your TV show? Do you remember?
I absolutely do.
Isaiah comes in, he brings champagne, and we get 15 minutes, and he's got to go. And there's all his people waiting, and it's gone like 20, and he's having a great time. And they're going like this. And he goes, all right, they're telling me this is live. All right, I guess I got to go. And I said, well, I'd shake your hand, but Pistons don't shake hands. I get that. And he said, what did you say? I said, I watched you against the Bulls. You guys walk out. You don't shake hands at the end. So have a good day. Thanks for coming. He's like, cancel it. You want to do this right now?
Come on.
He stayed for 35 minutes. You want to talk about, and he pointed at something of Michael. You want to talk about it? Let's go.
Wow.
It was the most amazing
awesome.
TV show I've ever been a part of.
I'm bringing it back to baseball for my last two. Player off the radar. We've talked a lot. We haven't actually brought up a lot. We talked about a lot of pitchers or anything in position players. Talked about a couple of the prospects. But player that no one or off the radar, player off the radar, no one's talking about, but will be. I know that puts a little bit of pressure maybe on that player, or maybe, but like who's a guy, whether it's a bullpen arm, something.
Peyton Pillette.
Peyton Pillette. It's the second time I've heard that.
It was the first time me.
No, the first time it was not you actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Eli.
There you go.
There's
Makes
two.
sense.
That's good.
He had him.
Yeah, exactly.
Helped win the Southern League Championship.
Yeah. So that's two.
Well, once he went to the bullpen, I mean, he was absolutely lights out.
Yeah.
He didn't give up a run for close to like 2 months.
Right. No, it's
so yeah. And
so you got any more, Cap?
Last thing, have you ever had an interaction with fan media where you're like, I can't believe that just happened? Because I was sitting at the winter meetings in Dallas several years ago, and the late Kevin Towers is there. Did you know him at all?
a little bit, yeah. Great guy.
The greatest.
Yeah.
So a buddy of mine and I are having a beer. It's 11 o'clock at night, and he walks over. I don't know who he is. I know the name. Never had seen the man like in this setting. So he sits down. Oh, what's your name? I said, my name's David Campbell. He said, oh, I'm Kevin. Nice to meet you. And he said, what team are you here with? I said, I'm actually covering the Cubs. He said, oh, what 36-year-olds you guys give a multi-year deal to this year? And I'm like, what team are you with? And he said, San Diego. I said, I'd love to meet the dumbass GM there. Tony Gwynn gets fatter and he keeps giving him more money. And he goes, I'm Kevin Towers, the general manager of the San Diego Padres. And till the day he died, I would see him every year somewhere. And he would be like, hey, you want to take another shot at me? He was the greatest. Such a good guy. Have you ever had an interaction where maybe they didn't even know you were you?
I mean, trying to think. I would say one of the more uncomfortable feelings that I've experienced as a player. You know, you get these autograph signings set up, and it could be Dick's Sporting Goods or you know, and everyone. And I was doing it with 2 other players. You know, it's just 3 of us, and there's a pretty long line. And you know, they're all excited, and you got kids, and then you've got adults. I mean, and then this guy, like, he would like look at me and then look the other way, look at me the other way. I'm like, what's this guy's story, right? And mind you, like, there was 3 of us, right? And granted, I was in the middle, and like, first signature, he looked at me and he said, "I don't want your autograph." And then went,
wow.
Wow. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that was
An adult, but
it was an adult.
Mm.
You know, it just he couldn't. You know, well,
Okay.
I mean, I obviously my Kansas City days because they not enough extra base hits.
That's it. Hey man, thank you for coming in.
Hang on,
man.
I got one more. Hang on.
Okay,
Don't be
go
wrapping up the White Sox podcast, Cap. This is our territory. Okay.
Have
The last one, the last rapid fire one. Will the White Sox spend $100 million on a contract under your leadership?
I believe so.
I believe so. All right. No, I mean, I make light of it, but it's obviously there's when it comes time to make that move, when the White Sox are good again or competitive again, going for playoff berths, and there's that piece out there in free agency that the White Sox need to add.
Or you're extending somebody.
Oh yeah, you're extending. Yeah, it
I
could be
mean,
your own guy.
I mean, I believe so. I mean, we're looking at the crystal ball here of, you know, all right, the timing of this, but yeah, the answer is yes.
Can you believe the money that's in the game now? Bobby Witt gets 285. Soto gets 760. Like, can you believe?
No,
Like, what was your signing bonus?
225,000, 4th round under slot. And yeah, I think, I mean, you look at what that is now.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Yeah. I can't believe they gave me under slot too.
I know.
What
God.
are those guys doing?
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, you look at Ohtani last year, and then you look at Soto, and those are very large.
Ohtani, the best player you've ever seen.
Yes,
It's insane.
it's insane. Yeah, you know, it's getting to the point where, you know, he's got all these feats, right? I mean, obviously the you know, the home runs, the speed, and then, you know, the pitching when he's healthy, and it's like, yeah, it's Ohtani. Yeah, it's just like
Is he your favorite player to watch? Like,
you
know, like when you're just watching the game and the guy comes up to bat, you stop.
oh yeah.
He's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, no,
It is.
he's-
I've never seen anything like it.
we'll never will. Chris, seriously, thank you so
Yeah,
much
you
for
got it,
stopping
guys.
by
It was
and
fun.
for the
You're the man.
candidness and
Appreciate it.
Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
happy to have you here.
Good
Best
stuff.
of luck. And Sox Fest coming up, so you'll see Chris Getz at the new revised Ramona Theater. What is it? The Ramova Theater. Chris Getz will be there. A bunch of White Sox. This has been the White Sox Recap Podcast here on the Recap Network, and wherever you download and subscribe podcasts. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.